Hello everyone, and welcome to our documentary for sleep. Tonight, we are not exploring the grand tapestries of battles and of kings, but the quieter, more intimate, and often more dangerous inner landscapes of the medieval mind. We are going on a journey into a world where the line between medicine and magic, between a cure and a curse, between a holy vision and a hallucination, was almost invisibly thin. We will explore how people, in a time of great hardship and of profound faith, sought relief, or vision, or simple, blissful escape, not through modern chemistry, but through the strange and powerful plants that grew in the fields and the forests all around them. This is a story of bitter roots, of sacred brews, and of the smoke that curled, with both promise and with peril, in the rafters of the tavern, the monastery, and the humble peasant cottage. There is nothing for you to do but to find a comfortable and a safe place to rest. Let the story unfold around you, a slow and a dreamlike drift through a world that is both familiar and profoundly strange. And let the quiet and the atmospheric rhythm of this history be your guide into a deep and a peaceful rest. Part away, smoke, herb, and ale. The herbal pouch. Our journey begins not in a grand apothecary or a smoky tavern, but with a simple peasant woman walking through a damp green meadow in the early morning light. A worn leather pouch is tied at her waist, and into this pouch she is placing the leaves, the flowers, and the roots of the wild plants that are her pharmacy, her hope, and her only defense against a world of pain and sorrow. The knowledge she possesses is not written in any book. It is an ancient oral wisdom passed down from her mother and her mother's mother, a quiet, feminine chain of knowledge stretching back into the mists of prehistory. She knows the secret names of the plants. She knows the right time of the month, the right phase of the moon to gather them. And she knows with a deep, intuitive, but often imprecise understanding of their strange, dual powers. Into her pouch goes a sprig of mugwort. This is one of the most common and most magical of all the medieval herbs. Its silvery green leaves, when dried and smoked or brewed into a bitter tea, were believed to induce vivid, prophetic dreams. It was the herb of the visionary, the tool of the person who wished to travel, in their sleep, to the world of the spirits. But it was also a practical, workaday herb used to flavour the brewing of ale and to ease the pains of childbirth. Next to the mugwort, she places a few downy leaves of henbane. This is a more dangerous, more potent plant. She knows to handle it with care. Henbane, a member of the deadly nightshade family, is a powerful hallucinogen and a sedative. A small amount, brewed into a tea, could bring a deep, dreamless sleep to a person suffering from a raging fever or a terrible toothache. It could quiet a colicky baby. It could bring a temporary, blissful oblivion. But she also knows that too much henbane could bring a sleep from which the person would never wake. The line between a cure and a poison is a fine one, and it is a line she must walk with a constant, anxious care. And then she might find the most powerful, most sought after of all the wild plants. In a corner of the field, the delicate, beautiful red or white flowers of the opium poppy are growing. This is the sleep bringer, the joy plant. She will carefully collect the seed heads. Later, she will score them with a knife and will collect the milky white sap that bleeds from the wound. This raw opium is the most effective painkiller in the medieval world. It could ease the agony of a broken bone, of a battle wound, of the final, terrible stages of a disease. But its power was not just to kill pain. It was to bring a profound sense of euphoria, of well-being, of a warm, floating detachment from the miseries of the world. For a peasant whose life was a constant, grinding struggle against pain and exhaustion, the temptation of this blissful escape was immense. This herbal pouch, filled with its collection of mugwort, of henbane, of poppy, is the medieval medicine cabinet. But it is also something more. It is a collection of keys, keys that can unlock the doors of perception, that can open the gates to the world of dreams, that can offer a temporary, deeply desired release from the hard, unforgiving prison of reality. The knowledge is imprecise. The dosages are a matter of guesswork, of a pinch of this, a handful of that. The gathering is guided as much by superstition and magic as it is by practical experience. But in a world without manufactured drugs, without doctors, without any other source of relief, this small leather pouch is a symbol of a deep, enduring human impulse, the impulse to seek an easing of our pain and to alter the nature of our own consciousness, using the strange, powerful gifts of the green, growing world. Ale and mead. From the quiet fields and the wild herbs, our journey takes us into the noisy, smoky, and communal world of the medieval alehouse. We are here to explore the most common, most widespread, and most socially acceptable of all the medieval mind-altering substances. It is a drink that was not just a luxury, but a fundamental, essential part of daily life. It is ale. It is important to understand that medieval ale was not the clear, fizzy, and relatively weak beer that we know today. It was a thick, soupy, and often nutritious beverage, a kind of liquid bread. It was brewed from malted barley, water, and yeast, hops, which are now a standard ingredient and which act as a preservative, were not widely used in many parts of Europe until the later Middle Ages. The result was an ale that did not last long, that had to be drunk fresh, and that had a sweet, malty taste. It was also, by modern standards, probably quite low in alcohol, especially the small beer, or thin ale, that was drunk by everyone, including children, throughout the day. This weak ale was a staple of the diet, a primary source of calories, and, crucially, it was often much safer to drink than the water, which was frequently contaminated with animal and human waste. But there was also the strong ale. This was the ale that was brewed for feast days, for celebrations, for the long, dark winter nights. It was brewed with a much higher concentration of malt, and it was allowed to ferment for longer. The result was a thick, potent, and highly intoxicating beverage, a drink that could quickly and effectively blur the hard edges of a difficult life. Imagine a group of peasants in an alehouse after a long day of back-breaking labour in the fields. The room is dark, lit only by a smoky fire and a few sputtering tallow candles. They are drinking the strong ale from rough earthenware mugs. The ale warms them from the inside out. It loosens their tongues. The quiet, reserved men of the fields become loud, boisterous, and full of a temporary, borrowed courage. They sing songs, they tell bawdy jokes, they forget for a few blissful hours the crushing weight of their poverty, the ache in their backs, and the gnawing anxiety of their precarious existence. The alehouse is their sanctuary, their escape. But ale was not just a simple mixture of barley and water. It was often a vehicle for other, more potent substances. The brewers, who were almost always women, the alewives, would often add a mixture of herbs to their brew, a concoction known as gruit. Some of these herbs were for flavour, but some were for other, more psychoactive purposes. Mugwort, as we have seen, was a common ingredient, believed to add a dream-like, slightly hallucinogenic quality to the ale. Henbane was also sometimes used in very small, careful quantities to create a particularly strong, stupefying brew, a drink that could lead to a deep and sometimes dangerously profound intoxication. And then there was mead. This was an older, more honoured drink, an alcoholic beverage made from fermented honey and water. It was the drink of the heroes in the great epic poems, the drink of the chieftains in their mead halls. Mead was often stronger and sweeter than ale, and it too could be a base for the infusion of herbs and of other stranger things, as we shall see. So the ale and the mead of the Middle Ages were not just drinks, they were a food, a medicine, and a doorway. They were the social lubricant that held the community together. They were the warm, hazy refuge from a world that was often cold, hard, and painfully clear. The alehouse, with its smoky, noisy, drunken cheer, was the great, sanctioned escape room of the medieval world. The monk's medicine. Let us now leave the noisy, secular world of the alehouse and enter a place of deep, profound silence, of discipline, and of prayer. We are passing through the heavy oak door of a monastery and into its quiet, ordered world. Here, too, the strange, powerful plants that alter the mind are in use. But they are used not for recreation, but for medicine and for the difficult, often painful, quest for spiritual transcendence. The heart of the monastery's medical knowledge is the infirmary and its adjacent herb garden, the hortus. Here, the monk, who is the infirmarian, the monastery's doctor, cultivates a wide, sophisticated array of medicinal plants, many of which are the same powerful herbs that the peasant woman gathers in the wild. But here, the knowledge is more systematic. It is based not just on oral tradition, but on the written texts of the ancient world. In the monastery's library, the infirmarian can consult the works of the great classical medical writers, like Dioscorides and Galen, which have been painstakingly copied and preserved by generations of his fellow monks. He has access to a knowledge that is lost to the world outside the monastery walls, and so his use of the powerful, psychoactive plants is more precise, more measured. He knows the power of the opium poppy. He will use it to create a potent painkiller called laudanum, a tincture of opium dissolved in wine. This is the most effective anesthetic in the medieval world. It will be given to a monk who is undergoing a painful surgical procedure, like the setting of a broken bone or the amputation of a gangrenous limb. It will bring a deep, merciful state of unconsciousness, a temporary death to escape an unbearable pain. He also knows the secrets of the mandrake root, a plant that we will explore in more detail later. He knows how to prepare a soporific sponge, a sea sponge, soaked in a potent brew of opium, of mandrake, and of henbane. When this sponge is held to the nose of a patient, the fumes will induce a deep, trance-like state of anesthesia. But these powerful substances are a double-edged sword. The monastery is a place of constant, grueling physical and spiritual struggle. The monks' lives are a cycle of prayer, of fasting, and of hard, manual labor. They are often cold and hungry and exhausted, and they are human. The temptation to use these powerful, pain-killing and euphoria-inducing drugs, not just for the sick, but for oneself, to ease the pains of a harsh life or to quiet a troubled mind, must have been immense. The infirmary, with its locked cabinets of dried poppies and of strange, powerful roots, was a place of great temptation. The monk who controlled these substances held a great dangerous power, and the use of these plants was not just for the body, it was for the soul. The goal of the monastic life was to achieve a state of mystical union with God. This was a state that was often preceded by visions, by ecstatic experiences, by a sense of the soul leaving the body. Many of the plants in the monk's garden, the same plants that were used to dull the senses, could also, in different dosages or in different combinations, be used to heighten them, to induce a visionary, trance-like state. The line between a medicinal sedative and a spiritual entheogen was a blurry, deeply ambiguous one. The monk, through extreme fasting, through sleep deprivation, through long, repetitive chanting, and perhaps through the secret, careful use of the visionary plants in his own garden, was seeking to break down the barriers of his own mundane consciousness and to open a doorway to the divine. The monastery, a place of the strictest discipline, was also in its own quiet, hidden way a laboratory for the exploration of the furthest, strangest reaches of the human mind. Incense and vision. Let us now move from the infirmary to the most sacred, most public space in the medieval world, the church. It is the time of a great, solemn service, a high mass on a major feast day. The air inside the vast, cold stone building is thick, heavy, and sweet with the smoke of incense, and this smoke is more than just a pleasant smell. It is a powerful, psychoactive instrument designed to transport the soul of the worshipper from the mundane world to the realm of the divine. Imagine the scene. The church is a vast, cavernous space, its high, vaulted ceiling lost in a deep, smoky gloom. The only light comes from the hundreds of beeswax candles, their flames flickering like captured stars, and from the narrow, stained glass windows, which turn the outside light into a series of rich, jewel-like colors. The air is filled with the sound of the choir, their voices chanting the ancient, hypnotic melodies of the Gregorian chant. The sound echoes and reverberates from the stone walls, creating a soundscape that is designed to overwhelm the senses and to lull the rational mind into a state of quiet submission. And then there is the smoke. A priest or an altar boy swings a censer, a metal container on a chain filled with glowing coals. As he swings it, he walks through the church, and a thick, fragrant cloud of white smoke billows out, filling the entire space. The primary ingredient of this incense is frankincense, a precious aromatic resin from a tree that grows only in Arabia and in Africa. It has been used in religious rituals for thousands of years, but it is not just a perfume. Modern science has shown that when frankincense is burned, it releases a psychoactive compound called incensol acetate, which has a powerful anti-anxiety and antidepressant effect on the brain. It literally makes you feel calm and a little euphoric. But frankincense was rarely used alone. It was often mixed with other powerful aromatic resins, like myrrh, which also has a calming, sedative effect. And sometimes it was mixed with other, more locally available and more potent psychoactive herbs. A pinch of dried henbane or of belladonna could be secretly mixed in with the incense, its powerful hallucinogenic alkaloids released into the smoke and inhaled by the entire unsuspecting congregation. The effect of this combination of sensory inputs, the low flickering light, the hypnotic droning music, the thick psychoactive smoke, and, for many of the peasants, a stomach that was empty from fasting, was a powerful, mind-altering experience. The worshipper would feel a sense of dizziness, of light-headedness. The world would seem to swim and to blur at the edges. The rational, critical part of the mind would be quieted. The emotional, spiritual part of the mind would be opened. This was the perfect state for a mystical experience. In this altered state of consciousness, the statues of the saints might seem to move, or to weep. The image of Christ on the cross might seem to speak to you. The colored light from the stained glass windows might seem to be a direct, divine revelation. The worshipper was not just being told about God, they were being made to feel the presence of God in a direct, visceral, and undeniably real way. The thick, heady, intoxicating air of the medieval church was a form of spiritual technology. It was a way of using scent and smoke and chemistry to engineer a collective religious ecstasy. It was a way of blurring the line between the physical world and the spiritual one, and of opening a temporary, fragrant doorway to the divine. The tavern's glow. Let us now retreat from the sacred, formal intoxication of the church and return to the profane, chaotic world of the tavern. We have seen how the common ale was the great social drug of the age. But the tavern was also a place for more secret, illicit forms of intoxication, a place where a stranger could offer you a drink or a pinch of a special herb that could lead to a night of wild, unpredictable experience. Imagine a dark, smoky corner of a crowded alehouse. The air is thick with the smell of spilled ale, of unwashed bodies, and of the pungent, slightly sweet smell of a burning herb. A small group of men are huddled together, passing around a small, simple clay pipe. Tobacco was not yet known in Europe, but the practice of smoking was. The pipe was filled not with tobacco, but with a mixture of local, psychoactive herbs. The most common of these was coltsfoot, a plant whose large, hoof-shaped leaves were known to produce a mild, relaxing, and slightly dizzying effect when smoked. But the pipe might also contain more potent ingredients, a pinch of mugwort to bring on a state of dreamy introspection, or, for the truly reckless, a tiny, carefully measured amount of henbane or of deadly nightshade. This was a dangerous game. The smoke from these plants could produce powerful, hallucinatory effects, a sense of flying, of the world dissolving into strange, beautiful and terrifying patterns. But it could also produce paranoia, a racing heart, and a profound, frightening loss of control. The tavern was also a place where drinks could be spiked. A traveller might be offered a place by the fire, and a mug of strong ale, and a pinch of a sleeping powder, a soporific made from poppy seeds or from mandrake root, could be secretly slipped into his drink. The traveller would soon fall into a deep, unnatural sleep, and he would wake in the morning to find that his purse and his possessions were gone. The tavern was a place of camaraderie, but it was also a place of danger, a place where a moment of trust could lead to ruin. And there were strange, specialized brews. A love potion, sold by a local wise woman, might be a mead that had been infused with herbs that were believed to be aphrodisiacs. A young man, desperate to win the affection of a certain girl, might secretly slip this into her drink at a village feast. Or there were the darker potions. A curse, intended to harm an enemy, might be an ale that had been deliberately contaminated with a poisonous or a hallucinogenic fungus, like ergot, which grows on rye. This could cause sickness, madness, and a terrifying fiery pain in the limbs. The tavern, a place of social connection, could also be a place for the secret, deadly settling of scores. The glow of the tavern is a warm, inviting light. It is a place of escape, of laughter, of song. But it is also a place with a dark, hidden underbelly. It is a place where the human desire for pleasure and for oblivion meets the human capacity for deception and for malice. It is a place where the herbs that could heal and could bring visions could also be used to harm and to exploit. The simple, communal act of sharing a drink is, in this world, always an act of trust and always a potential risk. Part 2, Between Cure and Poison. Mandrake and Belladonna. Let us now go out into the wild, forgotten places of the medieval landscape, to the edge of the forest or to the unhallowed ground of an old gallows. We are in search of two of the most powerful, most feared, and most legendary of all the psychoactive plants of the Middle Ages. These are the plants that belonged to the world of the witch, of the sorcerer, of the deep, dangerous magic. These are the mandrake and the belladonna. First, the mandrake. Imagine a dark, forked root pulled from the earth. Its shape is uncannily, disturbingly human-like. It has a torso and 2 legs. This is the mandrake, a plant that was surrounded by a cloud of terrifying, powerful folklore. The most famous legend was that the mandrake would shriek with a human-like piercing scream when it was pulled from the ground. and this scream was so powerful that it would instantly kill anyone who heard it, and so a complex ritualistic procedure was required to harvest the root safely. A black dog, it was said, must be tied to the plant. The harvester would then plug his ears with wax and would offer a piece of meat to the dog. The dog would lunge for the meat, and in doing so, it would pull the root from the ground. The dog would be killed by the shriek, but the human harvester would be safe and would have possession of the powerful, magical root. This story, of course, was a clever invention, a way for the sellers of the rare, valuable mandrake root to protect their trade secrets and to inflate the price. But it speaks to the immense power and danger that was attributed to this plant. Mandrake is, in reality, a powerful hallucinogen and a narcotic. It contains a cocktail of potent alkaloids like scopolamine and atropine. In small, carefully controlled doses, it was a powerful medicine. It was a primary ingredient in the soporific sponge, the medieval anesthetic. It could be used to treat pain, to induce sleep, and to calm a manic patient. But in larger doses, it was a doorway to a strange, terrifying world. It could induce a profound delirious state, a sense of flying, of transformation, of a complete, frightening detachment from reality. It was the key ingredient in many of the potions and ointments that were associated with witchcraft. And then there is its cousin, the belladonna, or the deadly nightshade. This is a beautiful, deceptively innocent-looking plant with soft green leaves and shiny black berries that look like small, luscious cherries. Its name, belladonna, is Italian for beautiful lady. This is because women in the Renaissance would use a drop of the plant's juice in their eyes. It would cause the pupils to dilate, an effect that was considered to be seductive and beautiful. But the beauty of the belladonna hides a deadly secret. It is one of the most poisonous plants in Europe. The same alkaloids that are in mandrake are present here in an even more concentrated, more lethal form. To eat even a few of the sweet-tasting berries can be fatal, and yet, like the mandrake, it was also a powerful magical tool. In tiny, near homeopathic doses, it could be used as a medicine to treat stomach cramps or asthma, but it was primarily known as a poison and as a hallucinogen. It was the plant of the assassin and of the witch. It was the plant that could give you the sensation of flying or the sensation of death. These two plants, the mandrake and the belladonna, represent the dark, dangerous side of the medieval herbal world. They are the plants that walk the knife edge between a cure and a poison, between a medicine and a madness. To work with them was to work with a power that was unpredictable and that could easily, fatally turn against you. They are a reminder that the medieval landscape was not just a place of gentle, healing herbs, but also a place of a deep, dark, and potentially lethal power. The witch's ointment. Let us now enter one of the most secret, most feared, and most misunderstood corners of the medieval imagination. We are in a small, dark, smoky hut at the edge of the village, and an old woman, a woman that the villagers whisper is a witch, is brewing a strange, potent, and dangerous concoction over her fire. She is making the legendary flying ointment. The belief in witches and in their ability to fly through the night to attend a great, demonic gathering, the witches' Sabbath, was a real, terrifying part of the medieval worldview. And the key to this magical flight was believed to be a special, secret ointment, a salve that the witch would rub upon her body or upon a broomstick to achieve the power of levitation. The recipes for this ointment, which were recorded in the great witch-hunting manuals of the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance, are a terrifying hallucinogenic cocktail of the most powerful, most poisonous plants known to the medieval world. Imagine the ingredients being ground together in a mortar and a pestle. The foundation of the ointment is a fat, usually the rendered fat of an unbaptized infant, according to the lurid, propagandistic accounts of the witch hunters. This fat is the base, the vehicle that will carry the powerful, active ingredients through the skin and into the bloodstream. Into this fat are mixed the key psychoactive plants of the nightshade family. There is henbane, the bringer of a strange, delirious sleep. There is mandrake, the root that can make a person feel that their soul is leaving their body. And there is belladonna, the deadly nightshade, the most potent, most dangerous of them all. Sometimes other plants are added, the opium poppy for its sedative, euphoric effects, or hemlock, the poison that was used to execute Socrates. This greenish, foul-smelling paste is the witch's ointment. It is a powerful, transdermal hallucinogen. When it is rubbed onto the skin, especially on the thin skin of the mucous membranes, the potent alkaloids are absorbed directly into the bloodstream, and the effect is profound. It would induce a deep, trance-like state, a form of waking dream. The user would not be truly asleep, but they would not be truly awake. They would be in a state of profound, vivid, and highly suggestible delirium. In this state, the sensation of flying would be incredibly real. The alkaloids in these plants are known to produce a feeling of weightlessness, of disconnection from the body. The mind, already primed by the powerful folklore of the witch's Sabbath, would then fill in the details. The user would not just feel like they were flying, they would be flying. They would see themselves rising through the chimney, mounting their broomstick, and soaring through the night sky. They would see the moon and the stars rushing past. They would see the other witches flying alongside them, and they would arrive at the Sabbath, a wild, terrifying, and deeply liberating vision of a world turned upside down, a place of feasting, of dancing, of a demonic, carnal, and ecstatic freedom from the rigid, repressive rules of the medieval church and of the society. When the user finally woke, hours later, they would be left with a vivid, powerful memory of their journey. For them, it would not have been a dream. It would have been a real, physical experience. The witch's ointment is a powerful, fascinating example of the deep, complex interplay between pharmacology, psychology, and folklore. It shows how a powerful chemical experience can be shaped and interpreted by the powerful, pre-existing beliefs of a culture. The ointment did not make a witch fly, but it made her believe that she could. And in the dark, repressive, and often hopeless world of a medieval woman, that belief may have been the most powerful, most liberating magic of all. Mushrooms in mead. Let us now return to the world of the feast, to the Lord's great hall, or to a special ceremonial gathering. The ale is flowing, the fire is roaring, and a special, powerful, and potentially dangerous drink is being prepared. It is a mead, the sweet, golden drink of fermented honey. But this is not an ordinary mead. It has been sharpened and enlivened with the addition of a strange, magical, and deeply ambiguous ingredient, the wild mushroom. The forests of medieval Europe were home to a wide, diverse array of fungi. The people who lived close to the land had a deep, practical knowledge of them. They knew the delicious edible mushrooms like the chanterelle and the boletus, and they knew the deadly poisonous ones like the death cap and the destroying angel. But there was a third category of mushroom. These were the ones that were neither food nor poison, but something in between. These were the mushrooms that could alter the mind, that could open the doors to the world of the spirits. The most famous and most iconic of these is the Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric. This is the mushroom of the fairy tales, a beautiful, striking fungus with a bright scarlet red cap, dotted with white, warty spots. It is a mushroom that is poisonous, but that is also a powerful, ancient hallucinogen. It was well known in the ancient world, particularly among the shamanic cultures of Siberia and of northern Europe. And this knowledge, it is believed, lingered on in the folk traditions and the secret practices of the Middle Ages. Imagine a wise woman or a shaman-like figure preparing a special ceremonial mead. She will take the dried caps of the fly agaric mushroom and she will gently simmer them in the warm, honeyed liquid. This process helps to break down some of the more toxic compounds and to release the psychoactive ones like muscimol and ibotenic acid. The resulting mead is a potent, unpredictable brew. It is a drink that is to be consumed with a great ritual care in a special, controlled setting. The person who drinks this mushroom mead will undergo a profound, multi-stage experience. The first stage might be a feeling of nausea and of discomfort as the body reacts to the toxins. But this is followed by a stage of deep, trance-like sleep, a state of profound physical lethargy, and it is in this state that the visions begin. The user might experience a sense of a wild, energetic euphoria. They might feel a sense of immense strength, of being able to perform great, superhuman feats. This is believed to be the origin of the legendary rage of the Norse berserkers, the warrior shamans who would enter a wild, ecstatic, and unstoppable frenzy of battle after consuming the sacred mushroom. The user might also experience profound visual and auditory hallucinations. The world might seem to be filled with a vibrant, shimmering light. The patterns on a tapestry might seem to come to life and to dance. They might hear the voices of the spirits, of the ancestors, or of the gods. The experience could be one of divine, ecstatic communion, or it could be one of terrifying demonic assault. The nature of the vision was unpredictable, and it was deeply shaped by the mindset of the user and the setting in which the mushroom was consumed. The use of these mushrooms was a secret, hidden tradition, one that was condemned by the church as a form of demonic sorcery. But it is a tradition that almost certainly existed, a shadow spirituality that ran parallel to the official, sanctioned faith. It is a reminder that the human quest for direct, ecstatic experience with the divine is a powerful, enduring one, and that people have always been willing to eat the strange, forbidden fruit of the forest in the hope of catching a brief, dangerous glimpse of another, more magical world. Holy visions. Let us now step into the quiet, cold, and solitary world of the medieval mystic, the hermit in his cell, the anchoress walled up in her small room attached to the church, the devout, pious saint. These were the spiritual athletes of the age, the men and women who pushed the limits of human endurance in their quest for a direct, personal encounter with God. And their lives were often filled with profound, vivid, and life-altering visionary experiences. They saw angels, they spoke with Christ. They were shown the terrifying torments of hell and the ineffable, blissful beauty of heaven. The church and the people accepted these visions as a sign of true, divine grace, a miracle, a direct communication from God. But when we look at the lives of these saints through a modern scientific lens, we can begin to see that these visions may have had other, more earthly, and more physiological causes. The line between a holy vision and a hallucination is a very blurry one indeed. Let us consider the three primary conditions that defined the life of the medieval mystic: hunger, sleeplessness, and the consumption of psychoactive herbs. First, hunger. The saints were masters of the art of extreme competitive fasting. They saw the denial of the body's need for food as a powerful spiritual discipline. They would go for days or even weeks with nothing but bread and water. A saint like Catherine of Siena was famous for her ability to survive on almost no food at all. We now know that prolonged starvation has a profound effect on the brain. It can induce a state of lightheadedness, of euphoria, and of vivid, hallucinatory visions. The starving brain is a dreaming brain. The visions of the fasting saints may have been, in part, a direct biochemical result of their extreme devotional hunger. Second, sleeplessness. The mystics' life was a life of constant, vigilant prayer. They would sleep for only a few short hours a night, and they would often rise in the middle of the night for long, prayerful vigils. The monks in the monastery followed a rigid schedule of prayers that broke the night into several short segments. We know that sleep deprivation is another powerful, reliable way to induce hallucinations. A mind that is starved of sleep will begin to dream while it is still awake. The barrier between the conscious world and the subconscious world begins to break down. The strange, dreamlike figures that the saints saw in their cells may have been the phantoms of a mind that was quite literally, piously exhausted. And third, the herbs. We have already seen how the monasteries were the great repositories of herbal knowledge. The saints and the mystics, who were often afflicted with all manner of physical illnesses, would have had access to and would have been treated with the powerful psychoactive plants from the infirmary garden, the pain-killing euphoric opium poppy, the sedative, dream-inducing henbane, the hallucinogenic, delirious mandrake. A saint suffering from a painful illness and in a state of extreme spiritual fervor might be given a dose of a powerful herbal medicine, and the resulting psychoactive experience would be interpreted through the powerful lens of their faith, not as a side effect of a drug, but as a direct, divine visitation. To say this is not to dismiss the spiritual experiences of these mystics. It is not to say that their visions were not real. It is to understand that the spiritual experience is always intimately tied to the physical body. The medieval saint, through a combination of a deep, genuine faith and the extreme physical and chemical conditions of their life, was able to achieve a state of consciousness that was profoundly, genuinely different from our own, a state in which the veil between the worlds was for them truly, miraculously lifted. The village drunkard. The ale and the mead and the herbs offered a temporary, welcome escape from the hardships of medieval life. But for some, the escape became a trap. For some, the temporary visit to the world of oblivion became a permanent, tragic residence. This is the story of the village drunkard. In a society where the drinking of ale was a normal daily activity, the line between a social drinker and a problem drinker was a blurry one. But the community knew with a kind of collective, unspoken wisdom when that line had been crossed. Imagine a man in the village. In his youth, he was a good, hard-working peasant. But a series of misfortunes has befallen him. Perhaps his wife died in childbirth. Perhaps his crop failed one too many times. Perhaps he simply lacks the physical or the emotional resilience to endure the constant, grinding pressure of his life, and so he seeks his refuge more and more in the smoky, hazy, false comfort of the alehouse. His drinking is no longer a social weekend activity. It is a daily, solitary necessity. He sells his last few possessions, his best tunic, his spare pair of shoes, to pay the alewife for another mug. He neglects his fields. He neglects his children. He has abdicated from his responsibilities. He has become a drunkard. The village's attitude towards this man is a complex mixture of pity, of contempt, and of fear. There is pity because they all understand the hardships that have driven him to this state. They all know how tempting the escape of the ale can be. They see him, and they see a version of what they too could become if their own luck or their own will were to fail. But there is also contempt. In a small, interdependent community where every person's labor is essential for the survival of the whole, a man who does not work is a burden. He is a drain on the meager resources of the village. He is a moral failure. He has given in to the sin of sloth and of gluttony. He has chosen the easy, shameful path of oblivion over the hard, honourable path of endurance. And there is fear. A man who is drunk is a man who is unpredictable. He can be loud and belligerent and violent. He can start a fight. He can cause a fire. He is a source of chaos and of disorder in a world that is already precarious enough. And so, the community must act. The punishment for public drunkenness and for being a habitual drunkard was a public, humiliating one. The man might be put in the stocks. This was a wooden frame with holes for the person's ankles, and sometimes their wrists and their neck. He would be locked into this device in the middle of the village square for a whole day. He would be exposed to the elements and to the public ridicule of his neighbours. The children would mock him. The women would scold him. People might throw rotten vegetables or filth at him. The punishment was not just a physical discomfort. It was a form of social shaming, a way of publicly marking him as an outcast. Or he might be forced to wear the drunkard's cloak. This was a heavy wooden barrel with a hole for the person's head, which they were forced to wear as a sign of their shame. These punishments were not designed to cure the man of his addiction. They were designed to enforce the social order. They were a ritual of communal disapproval, a way for the village to collectively reaffirm its own hard-won values of sobriety, of hard work, and of responsibility. The village drunkard is a tragic, lonely figure. He is a man who has sought escape and has found only a different, more miserable kind of prison. He is a reminder that in the hard, unforgiving world of the Middle Ages, the price of losing oneself too deeply and too often to the comforting, treacherous embrace of the ale and of the herbs was a swift, brutal, and very public fall from grace. Part 3. Ritual and Control. The apothecary's jars. Let us now step into a small, dark and fascinating shop in a street of a bustling medieval town. The air inside is thick, dry, and filled with a complex, exotic, and almost overwhelming mixture of smells. It is the smell of 100 different dried herbs, of spices, of resins, and of strange animal and mineral concoctions. We are in the shop of the apothecary. The apothecary is a figure who stands somewhere between the village wise woman and the university-trained physician. He is a professional, a craftsman of cures, a man whose knowledge is based not just on folk tradition, but on the written, scholarly texts of the ancient world. His shop is a laboratory and a library. The walls are lined with shelves, and on these shelves are hundreds of small, beautifully crafted earthenware, or of glass jars. Each jar is carefully labelled in a spidery Latin script with the name of the substance it contains. Here is a jar of Papaver somniferum, the dried seed heads of the opium poppy. Here is a jar of Hyoscyamus niger, the leaves of the henbane. And here is Atropa belladonna, the deadly nightshade. The apothecary has all the powerful psychoactive plants of the folk healer, but he handles them with a new scientific precision. He has a set of small, delicate bronze scales, and on these scales he will carefully, meticulously weigh out the ingredients for his prescriptions. He understands the profound importance of the dose. He knows that the difference between a medicine that will bring a peaceful sleep and a poison that will bring a permanent one is a matter of a few tiny grains. His knowledge is based on the ancient, classical theory of the four humours. He believes that the body is a balance of blood, of phlegm, of yellow bile, and of black bile, and that every herb and every substance has a quality of being hot, or cold, or wet, or dry. His job is to diagnose the humoral imbalance of his patient and to prescribe a remedy that will restore that balance. A patient who is suffering from an excess of black bile, a condition of melancholy, might be given a preparation that is hot and wet, like a wine that has been infused with cinnamon and with cloves. A patient with a hot, feverish condition, an excess of yellow bile, might be given a cooling remedy like a tea made from willow bark. The apothecary is also a pharmacist. He will take these raw ingredients and he will transform them into more complex, more palatable forms. He will grind the dried herbs into a fine powder with a heavy stone mortar and pestle. He will distill them to create essential oils. He will mix them with honey or with wine to create a sweet, easy-to-swallow syrup or a tincture. He also traffics in more exotic, more magical substances. In a locked cabinet, he might have a piece of a unicorn's horn, which is actually the tusk of a narwhal, and which was believed to be a universal antidote to poison. He might have a small amount of mummy powder, a gruesome, highly prized medicine made from the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptian mummies, which was believed to have powerful healing properties. The apothecary's shop is a place of great power and of great ambiguity. He is a respected, learned man, a purveyor of health and of healing. But he is also a dealer in poisons, in narcotics, in strange, magical substances. The same jar of poppy that can provide a merciful relief from pain for a sick person can also provide a blissful, addictive escape for a wealthy, bored nobleman. The apothecary is a gatekeeper. He controls the access to the powerful mind-altering substances of his age. He is a man who walks a constant, careful line between the world of medicine and the world of intoxication, between the responsibility of the healer and the temptation of the dealer. His small, dark, fragrant shop is the place where the science, the magic, and the commerce of the medieval drug trade all come together. Carnival madness. Let us now step out of the quiet, ordered world of the apothecary's shop and into the noisy, chaotic, and brilliantly coloured world of a great public festival. It is the time of carnival, the few short days of madness and of indulgence that come just before the long, grim, and hungry fast of Lent. And this is a time when the normal rules of society are not just relaxed, they are gleefully, spectacularly turned upside down. Carnival is a festival of the body. It is a last, desperate, gluttonous embrace of the pleasures of the flesh before the 40 days of spiritual discipline and of physical denial. And it is a time when the consumption of mind-altering substances is not just tolerated, it is the very point of the whole affair. Imagine the streets of a medieval town during Carnival. They are not the quiet, orderly streets of a normal day. They are a swirling, chaotic, noisy river of humanity. The people are not in their normal, sober clothes. They are in costume. Men are dressed as women, and women are dressed as men. The peasant is dressed as a king, and the king is dressed as a fool. The world has become a great, theatrical and joyful masquerade, and everyone is drinking. The ale and the wine flow, not in mugs but in rivers. The taverns are overflowing, their doors thrown open to the street. People are drinking from morning until night, a collective, communal act of determined, joyful intoxication. This is not the quiet, solitary drinking of the village drunkard. This is a social, celebratory drunkenness. The ale is not just a way to escape from misery. It is a way to fuel the madness and the joy of the festival. And the herbs are also present. A person might wear a garland of mugwort or of ivy on their head, a pagan symbol of intoxication and of connection to the wild plant-based spirit world. A special strong carnival ale might be brewed, an ale that has been deliberately laced with stimulating or with disinhibiting herbs. The goal of the carnival is a state of collective ecstasy, a temporary sanctioned madness. It is a time to forget your social status, to forget your worries, to forget the rules. It is a time to sing, to dance, to feast, and to lose yourself in the great, chaotic and joyful anonymity of the crowd. The authorities, both the secular and the religious, looked upon this festival with a mixture of tolerance and of deep, profound unease. They understood that it was a necessary safety valve, a way for the common people to blow off the steam of their repressed, difficult lives. They knew that if they tried to ban it, the pressure would simply build up, and it would explode in a much more dangerous, more violent form of rebellion. So, for a few short days, they allowed the madness to reign. They allowed the world to be turned upside down. But they also knew that it was a dangerous time. The line between a joyful, festive chaos and a violent, destructive riot was a very thin one. The carnival was a licensed temporary insanity, but it was an insanity that had to be carefully managed and that had to end, abruptly and completely, with the tolling of the church bells on the morning of Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent. The carnival is a fascinating, vibrant window into the medieval mind. It shows us a world that was not just one of grim, pious, and sober repression. It was also a world that understood and that even celebrated the deep human need for release for ecstasy and for the temporary joyful and sometimes mad and sometimes dangerous oblivion that could be found in the bottom of a mug of strong herbal ale. The draught of sleep. Let us now leave the wild public chaos of the carnival and enter a quiet, private, and deeply anxious space. We are in the bedchamber of a wealthy merchant's wife. She is in labor. Or we are in a makeshift military tent on the edge of a battlefield, where a surgeon is preparing to remove an arrow from a wounded knight. These are moments of extreme, unavoidable, and almost unbearable physical pain. And in a world without modern anesthetics, the only defense against this agony was a thick, dark, powerful, and deeply dangerous potion, the draught of sleep. We have seen how the monks in the infirmary and the apothecaries in their shops had access to a powerful herbal pharmacopoeia, and their most important, most dramatic preparations were the ones that were designed to induce a state of unconsciousness, to create a temporary chemical death that would allow the patient to survive the brutal butchery of medieval surgery. Imagine the surgeon. He's not the clean, scientific, and respected figure of today. He is a craftsman, a barber surgeon, a man who works with his hands and whose knowledge is practical and not theoretical. His tools are not sterilized, they are a terrifying iron collection of saws, of knives, and of probes. He knows that the pain of his work will be so intense that it can kill the patient from shock alone. And so his first, most important task is to render the patient unconscious. He will call for the draught of sleep. It is a thick, dark, and bitter-tasting liquid served in a wooden cup. The recipe is a closely guarded secret, a mixture of the most powerful narcotic plants. The primary ingredient is almost always opium, the dried latex of the poppy, a powerful, reliable painkiller, and a sedative. To this is added a generous amount of henbane, which helps to induce a state of amnesia, so that the patient, if they survive, will have no memory of the ordeal. And then comes the mandrake, the root that can bring on a deep, death-like, comatose state. All of these ingredients are boiled together in a strong wine, which acts as a solvent, and which adds its own intoxicating power to the brew. The patient is given this cup. They are told to drink it all and to drink it quickly. They know that this potion is their only hope of surviving the surgeon's knife. But they also know that it is a profound, dangerous gamble. The problem with these herbal anesthetics was the complete, terrifying lack of standardization. The potency of the plants could vary dramatically depending on the season they were gathered, on the soil they grew in, on the way they were prepared. The surgeon was working with a wild, unpredictable medicine. The dose was a matter of pure, terrifying guesswork. Too little, and the patient would not be fully unconscious. They might wake up screaming in the middle of the operation, too much, and the potion that was meant to bring a temporary sleep would bring a permanent one. The patient would simply slip from their deep, narcotic slumber into death. The line between anesthesia and a fatal overdose was a razor's edge, and the surgeon walked it with every single patient. For the person who drinks the draught, the world begins to dissolve. The sounds of the room become distant and echoing. The faces of the people around them begin to blur. A heavy, irresistible wave of darkness rises up, and they are pulled under into a deep, dreamless, and utterly silent oblivion. It is the closest a living person can come to the experience of death itself. And their only hope is that on the other side of that great, dark and silent river, they will, by some miracle, wake up again. Pilgrim's tonic. Let us now join another very common figure of the medieval world, the pilgrim. He is on a long, arduous, and deeply spiritual journey. He is walking for weeks or for months across the rough, dangerous roads of Europe to reach a sacred, distant shrine, to Canterbury, to Rome, to Santiago de Compostela. His journey is an act of piety, a penance for his sins, a quest for a miraculous cure. And it is a journey of profound physical and psychological hardship. And in his small leather pouch alongside his crust of bread and his rosary, he carries a small, vital collection of herbs. These herbs are not for a grand mystical vision. They are for the simple, brutal, and daily reality of the road. They are the pilgrim's tonic, his fuel, his medicine, and his courage. The first and the most important challenge of the pilgrimage is exhaustion. The pilgrim walks for 20 or 30 miles a day, every day. His feet are blistered and bloody. His legs are heavy with a deep, bone-weary fatigue. His primary herbal ally in this battle against exhaustion is a plant that we might now consider a simple culinary herb, rosemary. In the medieval world, rosemary was known as a powerful stimulant. The pilgrim would not just smell it, he would chew on a small sprig of the tough, needle-like leaves. The sharp, pine-like and resinous taste would be a jolt to the senses. The chemical compounds in the herb would act as a mild stimulant, sharpening the mind, clearing the head, and giving a small but crucial boost of energy to his weary body. He might also have a small bottle of Queen of Hungary's water, a popular medieval tonic which was a distillation of rosemary in a strong alcohol. A small sip of this would be a powerful, reviving draught. The second challenge of the road is pain. The constant walking, the hard ground, the poor-fitting leather shoes, all of it leads to a state of chronic, low-level pain. For this, the pilgrim might chew on the bark of the willow tree, a natural common source of salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. It was a bitter, unpleasant taste, but it would provide a gentle, welcome relief from the dull, throbbing ache in his feet and in his joints. The third great challenge of the pilgrim's road is fear. The roads, as we have seen, were not safe. They were haunted by bandits, by wolves, and by the simple, profound fear of the unknown. For this, the pilgrim had an herb of courage, St. John's wort. This plant, with its small, yellow flowers that seemed to hold the light of the sun, was believed to be a powerful, spiritual protector. Its name comes from its association with John the Baptist, and it was believed to have the power to drive away demons and to ward off evil. The pilgrim would carry a dried sprig of it as a talisman, or they might drink a tea made from its leaves, a drink that was believed to bring a sense of inner calm and of spiritual fortitude. We now know that St. John's wort contains compounds that have a mild antidepressant effect. And finally, the pilgrim needed something to help him sleep in the strange and the often uncomfortable and the noisy communal dormitories of the pilgrim hostels. For this, he might have a small bag of dried hops or of lavender, which he would place inside his pillow, the gentle and the sedative aroma helping to bring a peaceful and a much-needed rest. The pilgrim's herbal pouch is a testament to the practical and the resourceful and the deeply knowledgeable relationship that the medieval person had with the natural world. For the pilgrim, these plants were not drugs, they were his companions, his allies, his small and his green and his fragrant partners in a long and a difficult and a deeply sacred journey. Charms and powders. Let us now delve into the most secret and the most personal and the most magical uses of the herbs and the plants of the medieval world. We are moving from the world of medicine and of social drinking into the world of charms, of powders and of potions, a world where the lines between science and superstition and magic are completely and are beautifully blurred. Imagine a young woman in a village. She is in love with a young man who does not seem to notice her. What can she do? She might go to the local wise woman, the cunning woman, the person who holds the old and the pre-Christian knowledge of the secret properties of the plants. The wise woman will listen to her story, and then she will prepare a charm. It might be a small and a cloth bag, a mojo bag containing a mixture of carefully chosen and of magical herbs. There might be rose petals, the universal symbol of love. There might be yarrow, a plant that was believed to make love last. And there might be a more potent and a more psychoactive ingredient, like mandrake root, which was believed to be a powerful aphrodisiac capable of inspiring an irresistible and a magical passion. The young woman is told to secretly place this charm under the pillow of the young man, or to sprinkle a little of the powder from it into his food or his drink. This is not seen as an act of coercion. It is seen as an act of magic, a way of using the secret and the sympathetic powers of the natural world to influence the equally mysterious and the powerful forces of human emotion. The same herbs could be used for darker purposes. A person who has been wronged by a neighbor might go to the wise woman for a different kind of powder. This one might contain the thorns of a blackthorn bush and the bitter and the poisonous leaves of the yew tree. This powder would be secretly sprinkled on the doorstep of the enemy, a silent and a magical curse intended to bring them bad luck, sickness, or ruin. These charms and powders were a form of empowerment in a world where the average person, and especially the average woman, had very little direct power, very little control over their own lives. This secret and a magical knowledge was a way of fighting back. It was a way of trying to impose your own will on a world that was often arbitrary and unjust and cruel. These practices were, of course, condemned by the Church as a form of witchcraft, of devil worship. The priest, from his pulpit, would rail against those who put their faith in charms and in powders, and in the old and the pagan ways of the wise women. He would tell his flock that their only source of power and of salvation was in the sacraments of the Church and in prayer to the one true God. But the old ways were stubborn. They were resilient. They were a part of a deep and an ancient and an intuitive understanding of the world, a world where the plants were not just passive and are green objects, but were living and an active and a powerful beings with their own spirits and their own secret and a magical intentions. The peasant, in his or her quiet and a practical way, saw no contradiction in going to church on a Sunday and then going to the wise woman on a Monday. They were simply using all the tools that were available to them, both the sacred and the magical, to try and navigate the difficult and the mysterious and the often dangerous currents of their lives. Part 4: The Price of Escape. Bitter mornings, The carnival is over, the tavern has closed, the last of the strong and the herbal ale has been drunk. And now the medieval person must face the inevitable and the universal and the deeply unpleasant consequences of their indulgence. They must face the bitter morning after. Imagine a peasant waking in his cold and his dark cottage. The first and the grey light of dawn is filtering through a crack in the shutter. But this light brings no joy. It brings only a throbbing and a relentless and a pounding pain in his head. His mouth is dry and it tastes foul, like old leather and a stale smoke. His stomach is churning and a wave of nausea is washing over him. Every small sound, the crowing of a rooster, the cry of his own child, is a hammer blow to his aching skull. His body feels heavy and sluggish and poisoned. And this is the medieval hangover. It is a familiar and a miserable state, a physical and a chemical punishment for the temporary, and a joyful escape of the night before. The remedies for this state were as varied and as unscientific as the drinks that had caused it. The local wise woman might recommend a hair of the dog, another mug of ale, to try and ease the symptoms. Or she might prescribe a bitter and an herbal tea made from wormwood or from chamomile, a drink that was intended to soothe the rebellious stomach and to clear the foggy head. A more extreme and a more desperate remedy was to eat a mixture of raw eels and of bitter almonds. The logic behind this, if there was any, is lost to us. But for the most part there was no real cure. The hangover had to be endured, and it had to be endured while performing the same and the back-breaking and the relentless labour of a normal day. There were no sick days for a medieval peasant. The cow still had to be milked. The fields still had to be ploughed. The Lord still demanded his day of labour. To work from sunrise to sunset in the cold and the rain, with a pounding headache and a churning stomach, was a unique and a special kind of misery. It was a long and a slow and a painful atonement for the brief and the fleeting pleasures of the night. And the hangover was not just a physical phenomenon, it was a psychological and a spiritual one. The church taught that drunkenness was a sin, a form of gluttony that opened the soul to the temptations of the devil. The physical misery of the morning after was seen as a kind of divine punishment, a foretaste of the torments of hell that awaited the unrepentant sinner. The hangover was a time of deep and of profound regret. The man who had been a king, a poet, a brave, and a swaggering hero in the alehouse the night before was now just a miserable and a pathetic and a deeply ashamed creature, his body and his spirit brought low. And yet the memory of the pain would fade, the need for escape, for the warmth and the camaraderie and the brief and the glorious oblivion of the alehouse would return, and the cycle would begin again. The bitter morning is a reminder that in the medieval world every pleasure had its price, every escape had its cost, and the brief and the joyful journey into the hazy and the happy land of intoxication was almost always followed by a long and a hard and a deeply unpleasant journey back to the cold and the unforgiving light of day. The healer's peril. Let us now return to the quiet and the green world of the folk healer, the village wise woman, the person with the ancient and the powerful knowledge of the herbs. We have seen her as a respected and an essential member of the community, a purveyor of cures, of charms, and of comfort. But her position was a deeply and a dangerously precarious one. The same knowledge that made her a healer also made her a target. Her power was a source of peril. Imagine the wise woman's cottage. It is a place of mystery. The air is thick with the smell of drying herbs. Bundles of strange plants hang from the rafters. In the corner, a pot of some dark and a bitter-smelling liquid is simmering over the fire. To the villagers who come to her for help, this is a place of hope. But to the eyes of the church and of the authorities, this is a place of deep and of profound suspicion. The woman's knowledge is not the sanctioned and the scholarly knowledge of the university-trained physician or of the monastery's infirmarian. Her knowledge is an oral and a folk tradition. It is a woman's knowledge passed down from mother to daughter, and it is a knowledge that is deeply intertwined with the old and the pre-Christian and the pagan ways of the land. When she gathers her herbs, she does not just look for the plant. She recites a charm. She makes an offering to the spirit of the plant. Her healing is a mixture of pharmacology and of magic, and this is what makes her so dangerous in the eyes of the church. She is a rival. She is a purveyor of an alternative and an unsanctioned form of spiritual power. The priest in the village church offers salvation through prayer and through the sacraments. The wise woman offers a more direct and a more immediate form of power through her potions and her powders and her charms, and so she is always walking on a knife edge. As long as her cures are successful, as long as the babies she delivers are healthy, as long as her love potions seem to work, she is respected and tolerated. But when things go wrong, the mood can turn against her with a terrifying and a sudden speed. A child that she has treated with her herbal remedies dies. A cow that she has been asked to cure of a sickness withers and dies. A crop that she has blessed against a blight fails. And suddenly the whispers begin. She is no longer the wise woman, she is the witch. Her healing herbs are now poisons. Her charms are curses. The love potion she made is now a form of demonic bewitchment. The villagers, in their fear and in their grief and in their need for a simple explanation for a complex and a tragic event, need a scapegoat. And the strange and a solitary and a powerful old woman at the edge of the village is the perfect target. The accusation of witchcraft is a deadly one. She can be dragged before the Lord's court or the bishop's court. Her knowledge of plants, which was once a source of pride, is now the primary evidence against her. The fact that she owns a book of recipes, that she knows the secret properties of henbane and of belladonna, is now proof of her pact with the devil. The healer's peril is a profound and a tragic irony. The very people who held the most sophisticated and the most practical knowledge of the mind-altering and the healing properties of the plants were the ones who were most at risk of being persecuted for it. Their knowledge was a dangerous and a double-edged sword. It was the power to heal, but it was also the power that could, in a moment, lead to their own, and a brutal and a fiery destruction. 18. Kings and Potions. The use of powerful and of mind-altering and of medicinal substances was not confined to the world of the peasant and the monk and the witch. It reached into the very highest and the most powerful echelons of medieval society. The royal court, the glittering and the political and the cultural centre of the kingdom, was also a place of potions, of powders, and of a deep and a profound and often paranoid relationship with the hidden powers of the herbal world. Imagine the king in his great and a draughty and a stone castle. He is a man who holds the power of life and death over thousands of his subjects. But he is also just a man. His body is subject to the same pains and the same sicknesses as any of his peasants, and his mind is subject to its own unique and a royal set of anxieties. The king is surrounded by enemies, both real and imagined. He has rival nobles who covet his throne. He has foreign kings who wish to invade his lands. And he has traitors within his own inner circle. The fear of assassination, and especially of assassination by poison, is a constant and a gnawing and a daily reality. And so the king's relationship with the substances he consumes is one of deep and of profound paranoia. He has a royal physician, a learned man who is responsible for his health. And he has a royal taster, a servant whose job it is to taste every dish and to drink from every cup before the king himself will touch it. This is a job of great trust and of great and a personal risk. But the king also seeks out the power of potions for his own royal purposes. He might suffer from melancholy, a deep and a dark and a depressive state that the physicians of the time believed was caused by an excess of black bile. His physician would prescribe a cordial, a strong and a sweet and a spiced wine that had been infused with herbs that were believed to be uplifting and to bring joy like borage or saffron. These were the royal antidepressants. He might also suffer from insomnia, his mind too full of the worries of the state to find rest. And so he would be given a sleeping draught, a gentle and a carefully prepared potion of poppy and of lettuce seed to bring him a peaceful and a much-needed night's sleep. And the king, like any man, might be concerned about his own virility, his ability to produce a male heir to secure the dynasty. And so he would be given potions that were believed to be powerful aphrodisiacs, strange and an exotic concoctions of powdered orchid root, of ginseng, and of even more bizarre ingredients like the powdered testes of a stag. The court was also a place where these substances were used as weapons. A rival for the king's favour might try to discredit another by secretly introducing a mind-altering substance into their drink to make them behave erratically or foolishly in public. A queen, desperate to produce an heir, might secretly consult a wise woman for a fertility potion, a practice that, if discovered, could lead to accusations of witchcraft and of treason. The world of the royal court, which seems to us a world of power and of luxury and of control, was in reality a world that was just as dependent on and just as fearful of the secret and the hidden powers of the herbal world as the humblest peasant village. The king, for all his armies and his castles and his crowns, was in the end just a fragile and a human body and a worried and a human mind, seeking like everyone else for a little relief, a little security and a chemical help in navigating the difficult and the dangerous business of life. Possession or poison? Let us now explore the dark and the terrifying and the deeply ambiguous space where the medieval experience of a mind-altering substance collided with its most profound and its spiritual fears. This is the space where the line between a bad trip and a demonic possession was not just blurry, it was non-existent. Imagine a person in a village who has, either deliberately or accidentally, consumed a powerful and a hallucinogenic plant. Perhaps they have eaten the shiny and the black berries of the deadly nightshade, mistaking them for cherries. Or perhaps they have eaten a loaf of bread that was baked with rye flour that was contaminated with the dark and the purple fungus of ergot. The experience that follows is not a gentle and a dreamlike vision. It is a terrifying and a violent and a full-blown psychotic break. Their perception of the world is shattered. The familiar faces of their family become the leering and the demonic faces of devils. The simple and a wooden furniture of their cottage seems to twist and to writhe and to come to life. They hear voices whispering and blasphemous and terrifying things. They feel a burning and a fiery pain in their limbs, a sensation of being cooked from the inside out, a classic symptom of ergot poisoning, which was known as St. Anthony's fire. Their behavior becomes erratic and violent. They might scream and blaspheme and curse. They might thrash about with a superhuman and a convulsive strength. They might speak in a strange and a guttural voice, saying things that the person themselves would never say. How does the medieval community interpret this terrifying event? They do not have the language of pharmacology or of toxicology or of psychiatry. They do not see this as a case of poisoning or of a drug-induced psychosis. They see it as a case of demonic possession. They believe that a demon, a fallen angel, a servant of Satan, has entered the person's body and has taken control of it. The person's own soul is now a prisoner in their own flesh, and the demon is the one who is speaking and acting through them. The response to this is not medical, it is spiritual. The village priest is summoned, and he will perform the solemn and the dramatic and the terrifying ritual of exorcism. He will arrive with his holy water, with his crucifix, with his book of prayers. He will confront the possessed person, who is often tied down to a bed to prevent them from harming themselves or others. The exorcism is a spiritual battle. The priest will command the demon in the name of God and of Christ to reveal its name. He will sprinkle the person with holy water, which is believed to be painful to the demon. He will hold the crucifix before their eyes. He will recite the long and the powerful and the Latin prayers of the rite of exorcism. The possessed person, in the midst of their hallucinatory and their terrified state, will react to this drama. They will scream and curse the priest. They will recoil from the holy water as if from a fire. Their struggle is seen as the struggle of the demon fighting against the holy power of the church. This battle can go on for hours or for days. Sometimes the exorcism is successful. The person, as the drug begins to wear off, will slowly return to a state of lucidity, of exhaustion, and of deep and of profound confusion. The demon has been cast out. A miracle has been performed. Sometimes the exorcism is not successful. The person, their body already weakened by the poison, will die in the midst of their convulsions. The demon has dragged their soul to hell. This tragic and a fatal confusion between the effects of a poison and the effects of a demonic possession is a powerful and a terrifying window into the medieval mind. It is a world where every unexplained and a dramatic event has a spiritual cause. It is a world where the strange and the powerful and the often terrifying chemistry of the natural world is interpreted through the deep and the powerful and the equally terrifying lens of a profound and an unshakable religious faith. But the final draft. We have explored the many ways that the people of the Middle Ages used the powerful plants of their world to alter their consciousness, to ease their pain, to seek visions, and to find a brief and a fleeting escape. But there was one final and an ultimate use for these herbs. There was one final draught that offered not a temporary escape, but a permanent one. This was the potion that was used to bring not sleep, but the end of life itself. In a world of constant and of often incurable pain, of devastating and a terminal illness, and of a profound and a personal despair, the temptation to seek an end to one's own suffering was a real and a powerful and a deeply human one. The Church, of course, condemned this act in the strongest possible terms. To take one's own life was a mortal sin. It was the sin of despair, a rejection of God's gift of life. It was a crime that would condemn the soul to an eternity of torment in hell. A person who ended their own life was not allowed to be buried in the consecrated ground of the churchyard. They were buried at a crossroads, with a stake through their heart, a final and a humiliating desecration intended to prevent their restless and their damned ghost from wandering the earth. But for a person who was in a state of absolute and of hopeless and of unbearable physical or emotional agony, the threat of an eternal damnation in the next world could sometimes seem less terrible than the certainty of their suffering in this one. and the knowledge of how to achieve this final escape was readily available. The same wise woman who could provide a charm for love could also, it was whispered, provide a powder for death. The same apothecary who sold the sleeping draught to the surgeon could also, for a price, sell a more potent and a more final version. The ingredients were the familiar and the powerful and the deadly plants of the witch's garden. There was hemlock, the great and the classical, poison, with the one that was used to execute Socrates. A tea made from its seeds or its roots would cause a slow and a creeping paralysis, the mind remaining clear, while the body slowly and horribly shut down. There was monkshood, or wolfsbane, a beautiful and a purple flower that was one of the most poisonous plants in Europe. A tiny amount was enough to cause a swift and a violent and an agonizing death. And then there were the more gentle and the more seductive paths to the end. There was the opium poppy. A massive overdose of opium would not bring a violent convulsion, but a slow and a gentle and a euphoric slide into a deep and a comatose state from which the person would simply never wake. It was a soft and a warm and a dreamlike death. And there was the deadly nightshade, the belladonna. To eat a handful of its sweet and its black berries was to choose a death that was filled with strange and a delirious and a final hallucinatory vision. To prepare and to drink this final draught was an act of profound and of lonely and of desperate courage. It was an act that had to be done in secret and in shame. It was an act that was a final and an absolute rebellion against the authority of the church, of the community, and of God himself. The final draught is the darkest and the most tragic and the most hidden aspect of the medieval relationship with the powerful plants of their world. It is a reminder that the same herbs that could bring a healing sleep and a divine vision and a joyful escape could also be used to open the final and the one-way door into the deep and the silent and the eternal darkness, the shared pipe. As our journey through the hazy and the often dangerous world of the medieval mind-altering substances begins to draw to a close, let us linger for a moment on a simple and a humble and a deeply social ritual. It is a ritual that speaks not of solitary visions or of desperate escapes, but of quiet and of communal and of contemplative connection. It is the ritual of the shared pipe. Long before the arrival of tobacco from the Americas in the 16th century, the practice of smoking dried herbs in a pipe was a common and a widespread one in Europe and in Asia. The pipes themselves were simple and are functional objects, small and a clay, bowls with a short and a hollow stem. Imagine a group of soldiers huddled around a small and a smoky campfire on a long and a cold night watch, or a group of merchants resting at a roadside inn after a long day's journey, or a group of peasants gathered in the warm and the smoky glow of the tavern, and one of them pulls out a small and a clay pipe and a leather pouch of dried herbs. He fills the pipe. He lights it with a glowing ember from the fire, and he takes a long and a slow and a thoughtful draw. He does not hold the smoke in his lungs in the modern way. He simply draws it into his mouth, savoring its taste and its effect before letting it out in a slow and a fragrant and a grey cloud, and then he passes the pipe to the person next to him, and they, in turn, do the same. The pipe moves around the circle, from hand to hand, from mouth to mouth, a silent and a rhythmic and a deeply communal act. The herbs they are smoking are the common and the mild and the psychoactive plants of the European countryside. The most common was coltsfoot. Its dried leaves produce a gentle and a relaxing and a slightly euphoric effect. It was the everyday smoke of the common person. Mixed with the coltsfoot might be other, more flavorful or more potent herbs. There might be mint for its fresh and its clean taste. There might be mugwort to add a dreamy and a contemplative quality to the smoke and to the conversation. The effect of this herbal smoke is not a powerful or a dramatic intoxication. It is a subtle and a gentle and a social high. It is a way of creating a state of shared and a relaxed and a contemplative mood. The shared pipe is a peacemaker. In the slow and the quiet and the ritualistic passing of the pipe, the small and the daily, tensions and the aggressions of the group can soften and dissolve. The smoke seems to carry away the sharp edges of the world. The conversation that takes place around the shared pipe is often of a different quality. It is quieter and more thoughtful and more intimate. The gentle and the psychoactive effect of the herbs seems to encourage a more open and a more honest and a more connected form of communication. This ritual of the shared pipe is a quiet and a humble and a largely forgotten part of the medieval social landscape. It is a world away from the wild and the drunken chaos of the carnival, or the solitary and the terrifying visions of the witch's ointment. It is a testament to a gentler and a more contemplative and a more communal approach to the use of mind-altering plants. It is a reminder that these substances were not just used for escape or for magic or for medicine, but also for the simple and the profound and the deeply human purpose of fostering a sense of connection, of peace and of quiet and of smoky brotherhood. Mystic brews. Beyond the common ale and the medicinal tinctures, there existed a hidden world of secret and of ritualistic drinks, brews that were not for public consumption, but were reserved for special and for magical and for deeply spiritual occasions. These were the mystic brews, the potions that were believed to open the mind, not to a simple and a drunken oblivion, but to a direct and a conscious communion with the gods and with the spirits. This is a world that is, by its very nature, hidden from the historical record. These practices were secret and they were heretical. They were the remnants of the old and the pagan and the shamanic traditions of Europe, surviving like a subterranean river beneath the solid and the Christian ground of the medieval world. Imagine a small and a secret gathering in a hidden grove in the forest on a night of the full moon, or in a deep and a subterranean cavern. This is a gathering of a secret society, a coven, a mystery school, a group of people who are the keepers of the old ways, and they are preparing a special and a sacred drink. It might be a mead, the ancient and the honeyed drink of the Druids, or it might be a wine or a strong and an herbal ale. But into this base they are mixing a carefully chosen and a ritually prepared cocktail of the most powerful and the most visionary plants. There is the fly agaric mushroom, the ancient and the shamanic key to the world of the spirits. There is the mandrake root, the bringer of out-of-body experiences. There is the mugwort, the herb of dreams and of visions. The brewing of this potion is a sacred act in itself. It is accompanied by chants, by prayers, by incantations. The makers of the brew are not just mixing ingredients, they are imbuing the liquid with their intention, with their spiritual power. When the brew is ready, it is shared among the members of the group. It is drunk from a communal cup, a chalice, a sacred vessel. The act of drinking is a sacrament. The experience that follows is a guided and a collective journey into the other world. The leader of the group, the shaman, the priestess, will act as a guide. They will use the power of their voice, of music, of drumming, to help to shape and to direct the powerful and the hallucinatory visions that the brew is inducing. The goal of this journey is not a simple and a personal high. It is a quest for knowledge, for healing, for power. The participants might be seeking a vision of the future. They might be trying to communicate with the spirits of their ancestors. They might be seeking a cure for a sickness that has afflicted the community. This is a dangerous and a serious business. The journey to the other world is fraught with peril. The visions can be terrifying as well as ecstatic. The participant must have a strong mind and a pure heart, and they must have a deep and an absolute trust in their guide and in their community. These mystic brews are a testament to the fact that the human desire for direct and for spiritual experience is a powerful and a persistent one, and that even in an age that was dominated by a single and an official and a highly structured religion, there were always those who sought a more personal and a more direct and a more ecstatic path to the divine. These secret and a ritualistic drinks were the hidden and the heretical and the sometimes dangerous heart of the medieval counterculture, a quiet and a powerful and an underground stream of shamanic consciousness that flowed silently and secretly beneath the great and the solid and the monolithic edifice of the medieval church. The midwife's balance. Let us now return to a scene of profound and of primal and of female power. We are in the dim and the firelit and the intensely intimate space of the birthing room. A woman is in labor, her body in the grip of the powerful and the painful and the transformative process of bringing a new life into the world. And at her side, her guide, her comfort, and her primary medical support is the midwife. The midwife is a figure of immense importance and of deep and of profound ambiguity in the medieval world. She is, first and foremost, a healer. Her knowledge of the herbs that can ease the pains of labor, that can speed up a difficult birth, that can stop a dangerous hemorrhage, is a vital and a life-saving skill. Imagine her at the bedside of the laboring woman. She has her leather pouch of herbs, the same herbs that we have seen before, but she uses them with a unique and a specialized and a deeply intuitive skill. She might brew a tea of raspberry leaf, a well-known and an ancient uterine tonic, to help to strengthen and to regulate the woman's contractions. She might give the woman a small and a carefully measured dose of a potion containing the opium poppy to take the sharpest edge off the pain, to allow the woman to rest and to gather her strength between the waves of contraction. She might use the powerful and the dangerous fungus of ergot, which grows on rye. In a large dose, ergot is a deadly poison. But the midwife knows that in a tiny and a precisely controlled dose, it can be a powerful and a life-saving drug. It causes the muscles of the uterus to contract with a great and a powerful force. She might use it to induce a stalled labor or, after the birth, to contract the uterus and to stop a potentially fatal postpartum hemorrhage. The midwife's art is the art of the balance. It is the art of the dose. Her entire practice is a constant and a high stakes and a delicate and a dangerous balancing act. She is walking a razor's edge between a helpful and a therapeutic dose and a toxic and a harmful one. Her knowledge is her power, but it is also her peril. As we have seen, if the birth goes well, if the mother and the child are healthy, the midwife is a hero, a respected and a beloved member of the community. But if something goes wrong, if the baby is stillborn, if the mother dies from a hemorrhage, the midwife is in a position of extreme vulnerability. Her use of the powerful and the secret and the mind-altering herbs, which was intended to help, can now be used as evidence against her. The grieving and the terrified family and the suspicious and the misogynistic church authorities might ask, Did she give the mother a healing potion, or was it a witch's brew? Was the ergot she used a medicine, or was it a poison? Was the stillborn child the result of a natural tragedy, or was it a sacrifice to the devil? The midwife, with her secret, and a female and a powerful knowledge of the herbs that govern birth and pain and life and death, is a figure who stands at the very nexus of the medieval world's deepest anxieties about power, about magic, and about women. Her quiet and her skilled and her often life-saving work in the dim and the firelit intimacy of the birthing room is one of the most hidden and the most unsung and the most heroic stories of the age. It is the story of a woman using her ancient and an herbal wisdom to navigate the most dangerous and the most miraculous of all human journeys, always, and quietly and courageously, balancing on the thin and the precarious line between a cure and a curse. Firelight, merriment. As the long and the dark and the cold and the hungry nights of the medieval winter descended upon the village, the human spirit, with a stubborn and a resilient and a desperate need for light and for warmth and for connection, would retreat indoors, and in the small and the smoky and the crowded confines of the peasant cottage, a simple and a powerful and a chemical magic would take place. Imagine the scene. The family is gathered around the central hearth. The fire is the only source of light and of warmth in a world that has been given over to the cold and the dark. The wind is howling outside, a lonely and a mournful sound. The stores of food are low. The mood is somber and fearful. And then the father of the family brings out a small and a wooden keg. It is the strong and the winter ale brewed in the autumn and saved for these darkest of days. He fills a wooden mug for himself, for his wife, for his older children. The ale is thick and dark and sweet and strong, and as they drink, a slow and a gentle and a welcome transformation begins to take place. The first thing to change is the feeling of the cold. The ale spreads a warm and a pleasant and a chemical glow through their bodies, a warmth that comes from the inside out. It is a powerful and a deeply comforting sensation, a feeling of being fortified against the relentless and the creeping chill of the winter night. The second thing to change is the feeling of hunger. The thick and the malty ale is a food in itself, a source of much-needed calories. It fills the stomach, and it dulls the sharp and the gnawing ache of hunger. It brings a feeling of satiety, of a temporary and a blissful fullness. And the third, and the most important thing to change, is the mood. The alcohol, and perhaps the secret herbs that have been brewed into the ale, begin to work their magic on the mind. The crushing weight of the winter's anxieties, the fear of starvation, the fear of sickness, the fear of the wolves, begins to lift. The quiet and the sombre silence of the cottage is replaced by a new sound. It is the sound of conversation, of laughter. The father tells a joke. The mother sings a song. The children, their faces flushed and their eyes bright, begin to play a game. For a few short and a precious hours, the dark and the miserable and the smoky cottage is transformed into a place of warmth, of light, of connection, and of joy. The firelight merriment, fueled by the simple and the powerful chemistry of the ale, is a small and a weakly and a deeply necessary act of rebellion. It is a rebellion against the tyranny of the cold and the dark. It is a rebellion against the despair of the hunger. It is a rebellion against the crushing and the monotonous and the grim reality of their lives. This is not the wild and the chaotic and the public madness of the carnival. This is a quiet and a domestic and an intimate form of intoxication. It is a way of using a simple and a homemade substance to strengthen the bonds of the family, to renew the spirit, and to find the courage and the hope and the simple and a human warmth that is needed to endure one more long and a dark and a difficult night. Smoke into silence. And so, our long and our dreamlike journey through the strange and the hazy and the often dangerous inner world of the medieval mind comes to its end. We have walked in the fields with the wise woman, we have sat in the smoky glow of the tavern, we have knelt in the sacred and the psychoactive smoke of the cathedral. We have seen the power of the plants to heal, to harm, to bring visions, and to bring a simple and a blessed and a temporary oblivion. The world we have visited is a world where the boundaries that we take for granted were fluid and are porous. The boundary between medicine and magic was a constantly shifting one. The boundary between a food and a drug was almost non-existent, and the boundary between a holy vision and a madness and a simple and a chemical hallucination was a mystery that no one could truly or safely unravel. This was a world that was both more constrained and more free than our own. It was a world that was constrained by a rigid and a social and a religious order that looked upon any form of unsanctioned and a personal and an ecstatic experience with a deep and a profound suspicion. But it was also a world that was free from the modern and the chemical and the pharmaceutical industries that now mediate our relationship with the mind-altering substances of the world. It was a world where the pharmacy was the forest. It was a world where the power to alter your own consciousness grew, quite literally, in the ground beneath your feet. The medieval person had a direct and an intimate and a deeply personal relationship with these powerful plants. It was a relationship that was built on a foundation of ancient and an oral wisdom, a knowledge that was both profoundly sophisticated and terrifyingly imprecise. It was a relationship that was always, and a delicately, and a dangerously balanced on the thin and the precarious line between a cure and a poison.